like, how can I influence leadership from my leadership position, even if my position is lower? So I have those soldiers and people that I lead, but then how can I influence the leaders above me? And at the time when they said it, I thought they were just looking for a reason, because I felt like you had to have something to be critical of. But what I've learned over the years is that that was one of the most insightful things that I was told as I was going through my officer candidate school was, how do you manage, or how do you lead leaders? How can you lead those? How can you influence those who lead you? And so that's why I bring up the point that leaders can lead from any position. And so we want to talk about leadership. And so Jesus, though, becomes an incredible model for both management and leadership. He possesses both management skills as well as leadership abilities. I don't have this book, but I was reading through some stuff in my studies, and I want to get this book. It's an old book, but I'm going to look it up. It's called The Management Methods of Jesus by a guy named Bob Briner. It was written in 1996. But as I was looking through this, something I said I wanted to refer to, but I wanted to bring that up to you. But in Mark 1, with these verses that I read, verses 14 through 20, a couple of things I want to bring out is that, like I said, number one, he called leaders. He called them. He asked them to come. Now, when we look at Mark's account of this, it just seemed, what it appears is that he just walked up to the sea, called these guys, and they just left everything they knew and followed this guy who they'd never met. But if we turn to John chapter 1, and we look at verses 35 through 42, as John talks about this, it leads us to the possibility that these individuals, at least some of them anyway, had a prior relationship with Jesus before the call. And you'll see, even with John, you'll see this. So John 1, beginning at verse 35, it says, again, the next day, John stood with two of his disciples. John stood with two individuals who were followers of him, followers of John. In verse 36, and looking at Jesus as he walked, he said, behold, or look, the Lamb of God. The two disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. These two disciples heard John speak, lowercase h, where it says here the two disciples heard him speak. It's talking about John. It's a lowercase h. So these two followers of John, these two disciples of John, heard John speak, and then they followed Jesus. Then Jesus turned and seeing them following him said, what do you seek? And they said to him, Rabbi, which is to say, when translated, teacher, where are you staying? He said to them, come and see. They came and saw where he was staying and remained with him that day. Now it was about the 10th hour. One of the two who heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, we have found the Messiah, which is translated the Christ, or the anointed one. And he brought him to Jesus. Now when Jesus looked at him, he said, you are Simon, the son of Jonah. You shall be called Cephas, which is translated a stone. And so from John's account, it would give us a window to the possibility that some of these individuals who Jesus had called had a prior relationship. And so when he comes to the shores at here at the Sea of Galilee, that he says, hey, follow me, that they didn't leave leave everything they knew to this guy they'd never seen before, and just through some move of God. They just left. But Mark chooses not to focus on that part, because I believe Mark's call, or the way Mark is writing this call, it is showing us, it is teaching us something about followership, particularly following Christ. That there is this incredible dimension of faith, of leaving everything you know to follow him. These four, and the call of these four individuals of the 12, they're leaving. The first two, it appears that they're leaving an occupation of fishermen, right? The other two, not only an occupation, but a business, their family business. So it says, as he walked the Sea of Galilee, verse 16, saw Simon and Andrew's brother casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. They were working as fishermen. He says, follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men. They left. When he had gone a little farther from there, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, who were in the boat mending their nets. It says he called them, and they left their father Zebedee, but not only their father, but they also left the hired servants. That they were running a business. They were business owners, not just simply working and fishing as an occupation, but they had a business with their dad who had hired others in the business, and they left the business, they left their jobs, and they followed Christ. And so if we are going to be followers, this is a must-learn lesson for us, that if we're going to lead as followers of Christ, if you think about this, he says, listen, follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men. They were fishermen. That was the title of what they were doing. They were fishermen. But he says, I will make you to become fishers of men. That I'm going to teach you, using the things that you know, to apply everything you know and what you're doing right now as fishermen, an incredibly lucrative occupation in those days. And I'm going to take the things you know about fishing, and I'm going to teach you how to apply it to what I have for you to do going forward. You will still be fishers, but you will now be fishers of men. That your life now will be, I'm going to, as the same way that he called them, they will now begin to call others. And this is a must-learn lesson for us. And whatever it is that God has called you to lead, God has called me to lead in one instance here now as a pastor. I lead in other instances as well. But as a pastor, I have a requirement. One of the must-learn lessons today is calling others to follow. And the same for you. If you're leading in your church, if you're leading in your community, if God is calling you to lead in business, if God is calling you to lead in the community, and whatever it is, you have to call others into a following relationship in the same way that Jesus did. But as I said earlier, every good leader is a good follower. If you're a business owner, you still have to follow. If nobody else, you have to follow those who have contracted with your business. If you're going to be a successful business owner and you are the CEO, nobody inside the business outranks you. But if you're going to have a successful business, you have to learn how to cater to those who employ you, those who contract with you. Because if you don't follow them, if you're not willing to follow their direction, you'll find yourself without business. And so no matter where you are in the hierarchy, we are all following somebody. But the must-learn lesson for us is that if we're going to lead, you can't lead without somebody following you. But followership is important to every good leader. So when you feel called to lead, when you feel called to lead others, you gotta be willing to call others into a followership relationship, which is exactly what Jesus did here. Jesus asked people to follow him, and you have to do the same. But don't get so caught up in the traps that a lot of times we get caught up in our churches, in business or whatever, of looking for specific pedigree. Let me find something. I looked up something that I wanted to be a part of this discussion. So give me just a second. So when you look at these 12 men, there's a book about them. I think I have it on my shelf. It's called 12 Ordinary Men, that Jesus called 12 ordinary men. What is conspicuously absent from the initial 12 are not learned biblical people. There are no Sadducees, no Pharisees, no chief priests, no scribes, at least based on those who we know their profession. Because there are those who in the 12 who we don't know. There was no window that let us know what all of their professions were. But of the ones who we know, none of them were Pharisees or Sadducees or chief priests or scribes or learned people in the church. Now, one place where you will find a learned person would be Saul, who was later Paul. Paul was one of the smartest men of his day.